Let us begin at page 47, chapter 5. He stood there anxiously, hands in pockets. "Where do you want to sit?" she said. He had no idea. "Oh, just make yourself comfortable." It was a large family house. The door had panels of stained glass, and the hall floors was resplendently tiled. But it was unkempt and even untidier than Shahid's room, with bar floorboards, crumpled rugs, torn Billie Holiday and Malcolm X posters, and 3 old bicycles leaning against the wall. On chairs on the floor were piled dusty yellowing newspapers, some of them cut up, as if for filing. It was like a student place, and Didi told him that 3 kids from the college occupied the spare rooms. There was an open fire too, with the sofa in front of it. On the floor was a wooden board accommodating a piece of Gruyere. She went to fetch some wine. He sat on the sofa before realizing that when she joined him, she would have to sit beside him. He had such bizarre and hopeful thoughts on the way over, partly inspired by Chile, that now he felt apprehensive and bashful. He jumped up, went to the window, and checked the street. Chile's car hadn't moved. The music was off. Chile was staring into space. Shahid wondered when he'd ever seen him sitting still before. As if sensing him, Chile turned suddenly, grinned, and gave the thumbs up. Shahid shuddered. What would happen if Chile suddenly decided he wanted to meet Didi? It was just the kind of stunt he would pull. Then Shahid would have to explain why she shouldn't open the door. There was a sound from the kitchen. He quickly spread himself out across the sofa, with his feet hanging over the end, and occupied himself looking at the small TV, which was across the room on a shelf, though not turned on. Great to see someone who can make themselves comfortable anywhere. She was carrying a bottle and 2 glasses. She put them down and pushed a cassette into the video. It was an early Prince tape. While you watch that, I heat up some pumpkin and coconut soup with ginger. It's delicious. Would you like that? It sounds great, thanks, if it's not too much trouble. And by the way, he said as she went to the door, thanks for inviting me over to look at this stuff. I wouldn't be able to write my Prince paper without it. We'll discuss it later. Sure? Discuss it later? He settled down to watch the tape, but it ended before he could take it in. He couldn't find a changer, so he had to get up, rewind it, and watch it again. Then he watched another video, which he ran twice more, all the while straining to think of a comment to make. The word seamless kept entering his head. That was the level to aim at. But he couldn't think of any words to escort it. What would she think if he just said it was really seamless twice? He was changing the video when she came in with the soup on a tray, along with French bread and a Greek salad. She was about to sit down on the sofa. He couldn't race back now, push her over, and take up his old position. She indicated the videos. Do you find them sexy? He was sitting beside her. The soup was hot, and almost ignited his tongue as he tried to dispose of it. He couldn't help wondering where her husband was. Quite, but they're a bit like a pantomime too. He hesitated, and then went ahead. Do you find them seamless? Seamless, and not a little cathartic? I hate this house. Pardon? She was looking around the room. We are trying to sell it. Sorry, what did you say? The videos. Seamless. She stared into her soup. The fire was warming him. He would have to remove his jacket if he wasn't going to break out in sweat. He was down to his shirt and beginning to unbutton it when he was aware, from the hallway, of a pair of eyes on him. Brownlow hurried into his overcoat. Then he tried to smile and wave. Shahid did the same, all the while attempting to move away from Didi. But he feared he had transgressed, because Andrew came into the room, stood beside him, and looked down. Brownlow was about to say something, but, as he opened his mouth, recalled that he lacked the power of speech. Instead, he stuck out his adhesive hand, and Shahid took it as gently as he could, trying to ignore the fact that he almost had the man's wife on his knee. As Brownlow turned to leave, and Shahid, relieved, could resume nibbling at his soup, he saw Brownlow and Didi looking one another over with objective curiosity, as if searching for clarification, like strangers trying to recall where they'd seen each other before. The front door closed. Quiet man, isn't he? Didi put down her spoon to laugh. He is my husband. Can you imagine it? I find it difficult, I must say. One time you are passionately in love, and then another time Not that long after. You can't believe how you could feel so much. Has that happened to you? Once, years ago, Andrew came home from a party and described kissing a woman. In those days, couples were trying to be as honest and open as they could, you know. Why was that? I can't quite remember. For political reasons, I think. Anyhow, for 2 nights I didn't sleep. I had never felt so let down. Now I can't even understand how I felt that way. She sighed. One would hope as well that intimacy would leave more of a mark, that more of it would remain. But it doesn't. You just end up thinking, who is this person? They finished their soup. Didi asked if he fancied looking at the videos once more, but although he knew he remembered little of them when it came to writing his paper, other than that Prince clearly enjoyed wearing women's underwear, he knew he wouldn't be able to sit so still again. The trouble was, he didn't know if it was what she wanted or whether it would bore her. She removed the balls. On returning, she stood there with a finger twisting her hair and said, I'm sorry, I need to go out. I get tense if I'm here too long. And I don't want my lodgers to talk. There's nothing, she indicated them both. Nothing going on. But, she shrugged. He shook his head in agreement. But nothing will be all around the cottage by tomorrow morning. He jumped up and yawned in illustration. Anyway, I'm tired. No, you're coming with me. Am I? Unless you're too tired, I'd like you to, Shahid. No, I'm not tired. He was so impressed by her will and so off-balanced that he added, I go anywhere with you, so yes. That's nice. I love yes. It's practically the most interesting word of all, don't you think? Like a hinge opening the door outwards. Yes. He took a step towards her. The corners of her eyes were wrinkled with pleasure. Can I get ready? She disappeared for longer this time. He went experimentally to the window. Chile was lying back in his seat smoking, not looking at the house, but staring into the distance, his music rumbling sluggishly. What would Virgil in the Basque regions do now? Surely so far Shahid hadn't made a false move. But Chile, with his car and knife, would have been more in charge. Except that Didi wouldn't have gone near him. No, Chile was the last person Shahid wanted to be like. There was much he hated in his brother. If Chile believed Shahid had problems, they were nothing to the problems Shahid believed his brother had. Chile's basic understanding was that people were weak and lazy. He didn't think they were stupid. He wasn't going to make that mistake. He saw, though, that people resisted change, even if it would improve their lives. They were afraid, complacent, lacking courage. This gave the advantage to someone of initiative and will. Chile thought, for instance, that men were scared of making fools of themselves with women, so they held back when they should have been going forward. Chile called himself a predator. When a woman offered herself, it was the most satisfying moment. Often it wasn't even necessary to sleep with her. A look in her eyes of eagerness, gladness, acquiescence was sufficient. At home, Chile used to settle on Shahid's bed in the morning and tell of the previous night's exploits. Chile slipping down someone's shorts behind the tennis club. Chile in the dormitory of a girls' school escaping through a window. Chile's penchant for threesomes, him and 2 girls. King's Road sandwiches they were dubbed. Chile being picked up in a club and fucking the woman while the husband, an old man, watched. Papa also delighted in his boy's adventures. Not that Chile would recount the most salacious, for fear Papa would denounce them as too shady by far. But, keep me informed, he would cry across the house, when Chile went out on another burdensome expedition. Papa's interest was meeting the women. I'm sure they like going out with you, he'd tell Chile, but it's me they would rather talk to. Bring them. Chile would take them in to witness Papa lying on his bed in the center of the room, wearing a shimmering maroon dressing gown, under which he always wore blue silk pajamas. A Glenn Miller record played whilst he swigged whiskey in a long glass, half Bushmills, half carbonated water. This bed Papa took to whenever he was not at work. He lay there, like a pasha, with a pile of comics on his bedside table. The center of operations, he called it. Meanwhile, Shahid's mother kept to herself with her own friends, her sisters, and their children in another part of the house. It was as they were living in Karachi. Like Papa, though, more maliciously, Shahid delighted in Chile's adventures as tales of appetite and folly, particularly when they involved Chile looking foolish. Like the time he picked up a particularly bewitching woman at a club and awoke, after an unblemished night, to discover the house was laden with National Front posters and magazines, and her two cropped-haired brothers were tranking their braces in the lounge. Chili had adopted a Spanish accent, pretended he had little English, and raced out the front door. The problem was Papa wanted Shahid to emulate Chili. When Shahid was 15, Papa persuaded him to take out a local girl. They drifted around the countryside, and Shahid read Chili to her in a haystack. On his return, Papa insisted that Thibaut, his youngest brother who was schizophrenic and worked around the house, bring Shahid to the center of operations. Did you touch her? Papa stabbed at his own wheezing chest. Or further down, he continued, slapping his legs, as thin as a medieval Christ. Chili was smirking in the doorway. No. What have you been doing? Reading poetry. Speak up, you bloody eunuch fool. Reading Keats and Shelley to her. To the girl? Yes. Did she laugh at you? I don't think so. Of course she did. Papa and Chile couldn't stop laughing at him. Despite Papa's penchant for carousing, there was much that was upright and respectable about him. A small man, just over 5 feet, with a toothbrush mustache. He wore at the office suits or blazers, ties and grey trousers. During the war, he had flown RAF bombers from East Anglia, for which he had been awarded an MBE. There was always plenty that Papa had wanted to achieve. He had illimitable pride, gallantry even. Papa took his boys personally to the shops, ensuring that both he and they had the finest clothes. Even as his sons made faces at each other in the mirrors of Burson's the tailors, he and the manager turned the fat books of cloth squares, patterned and plain, like scholars peering into manuscripts. Papa would return several times for adjustments, always the trousers were too long, before deciding, after interminable consideration, which tie and waistcoat was slightly wrong for the suit. At home, he took Shahid and Chili into the bathroom to demonstrate the only correct way to shave, the loading of the brush and angle of the razor, soaping, rubbing, scraping, and pinching the flesh. Then Papa stripped naked for the bathing demonstration, which was followed by an illustration of how to powder the balls, armpits, and between the toes. Papa would rather lay down in the street than walk through a door before a woman. He taught his boys such courtesies, and how to shake hands firmly while saying, "How do you do?" He wanted people to say how smart his boys were. But had they benefited? Didi still hadn't returned. Shahid was getting spooked by her absence. What was she doing? Their parents had come to England to make an affluent and stable life in a country not run by tyrants. Once this was done, their remaining ambition rested with their sons, particularly the eldest. Papa loved Chili, but would he approve of him now? His most recent ambition was to make it in America, though it wasn't so much the voice of liberty that called Chili as the violent intensity. Time and again he watched his Once Upon a Time in America, Scarface, and The Godfather as careers documentaries. He had even cursed Papa out of earshot for coming to Old England rather than standing in light of Ellis Island with the Jews, Poles, Irish, and Armenians. England was small time, unbending. Real glory was impossible in a country where the policemen wore helmets shaped like sawn-off marrows. Chili thought he could be someone in America, but he wasn't going to go there poor. He'd get himself more established in London and then hit New York with a high reputation. The problem was, as their uncle Asif once stated, money had come too easily to Chile in the 1980s. He didn't respect where it came from. "It's easy for people, especially if they're young," he said, "to forget that we're barely arrived over in England. It takes several generations to become accustomed to a place. We think we're settled down, but we're like brides who just crossed the threshold. We have to watch ourselves, otherwise we will wake up one day to find out we have made a calamitous marriage." This was laced with bitterness, of course. Their uncle had the impossible task of living in a country which couldn't accommodate intelligence, initiative, imagination, and in which most endeavor bogged down into hopelessness. But Shahid recognized what he said. He got up. There was still no sign of Didi. Something might have happened. He ventured out into the hall to try to find her. He started to climb the stairs. Somewhere upstairs she was singing along the music. He recognized the tune. It was a song Chili often played while he was dressing in the evening, the first track of Becca's Banquet. He turned back. He heard a voice from the top of the stairs. "Shahid, is that you down there?" "Yes." Would you mind coming up and telling me something? What is it you want to know? I'm not sure what to wear. Can you tell me if I look alright? He mounted the stairs, wondering what she and the night promised.